Okay, today's daf is Ayin Vav, Shabbat Ayin Vav. I'm going to start with where we ended. I did some better research about the last line of the Mishnah because I wasn't so happy with how I understood it. So I came up with a much better way. This last line that we learned yesterday is a little bit confusing. And this is one of those things where you can see when someone says something that's very unclear, you can see why it went in different directions about how people understood it. And I did some better organizing and understand it a lot better than I did yesterday. So if you look at our Mishnah again, I'll just review the end of the Ayin Hamid. The Mishnah talks about this Od Klal Acher. If you remember, we had all the Lamatet Melachot, right? We started our parak with the issue of Shigigat Shabbat, Shigigat Melachot, and all that. Then we moved into the actual Melachot, and and how you have to bring a separate chatat on each one. Then we started from the end, talking about Hotza'ah. Maybe I'll even start with one nice idea here, or I don't know, nice idea, but something that I read in Mishnat Eretz Yisrael, which is that book I keep referring to of Safrai. Again, it's an academic commentary on the Mishnah. Unfortunately, it's only in the Hebrew right now. I don't know if they're trying to translate it or not. It's a relatively recent, it's been developing over the years. Anyway, it's an excellent commentary that gives an academic approach to the Mishnayot. And he includes Gemaras in it, so it's very interesting. And he says here that basically one of the issues is that Masechet Shabbat spends a lot in I would say, disproportional amount of time on the Melacha of Hotza'ah. You would think, especially after we saw that whole list, that Hotza'ah would be the least important Melacha. It's just carrying, it's not really a Melacha. It's not, or it's some people view it a little bit differently than the other Melachot. It's a little bit of a different type. Why do they spend so much time to find out? We had a few prakim before. We're now going to have a bunch of more prakim about it. Why is so central? And basically what he points out is that Shabbat so much discusses this malach of Hotza'ah. He doesn't really give a reason for it, but then he says, if you compare it to Eruvin, what's Eruvin about, our next Masechet? Eruvin is all about allowing you to carry. So you have all this time, the Masechet Shabbat spent trying to say, don't carry, don't carry, don't carry. And then you have Eruvin, which is all about how you can carry, how we can allow you to carry. So that's first of all. He suggests here that maybe there are different approaches. By the way, the Mishnah is put together here and the Mishnah is put together there. I heard say there's totally different approaches among Masechtot because they are really part of one book that someone kind of put together. Now, it's true there are sections and different. Anyway, I think it's just an interesting thing to point out about how Eruvin is fixing it. And maybe he also suggests that there's so much dealing with it because what was Shabbat to people in general? It was a day where they were home. Now, in their day, I imagine now we can understand this very well. You're stuck at home. Your house is not so big. You don't have a lot of space. You want to get out, right? So on Shabbat, it's a great day, right? Normally, you're not even in your house because you're out working all day. But on Shabbat, you're in your house all day. Your house isn't big enough for everybody and everything. You want to get out. Now, when you want to get out, you want to carry stuff with you. So carrying becomes very central because you mainly, he talks about in a formal manner, you're going to shul, and in an informal manner, you're seeing friends. And it's a day you want to be out a lot. So because of that, it plays a very central role because it's one of the issues that really people grapple with a lot. If you think about it, it's hard for us to understand. For most of us, we live in a place where there's an eruv. I'm sure there's some people out there listening who don't have an eruv. And it really is a huge issue, right? Well, if we go away and we're somewhere for Shabbat in a place where there's no eruv, and we try as hard as we can, and we go away somewhere, then on Shabbat we find a place with an eruv because it's so hard to function in normal life without being able to carry anything. So same thing for them, right? This was no different. In fact, nowadays, maybe you could find a water fountain somewhere you could drink from. I guess they had, the truth is they did have Borei Mayim and things like that. But anyway, right, that's the whole thing about the Ole Regalim. When they went on the way to drink, they put up these Pasei Biraot around the water. That's always the biggest issue, water. Because if you can't have water to drink, it's very hard to walk anywhere, especially if the weather's like it is right now in Israel. Anyway, that's just an aside about the whole issue of carrying. So now back to the Mishnah. So the Mishnah now starts with Hotza'ah, and it says, Od Klal Acher Amru. Now, I want to make it I'm going to try to organize this in a very clear manner. We're going to talk about the first part of the Mishnah and the second part of the Mishnah. There's a debate between Rashi and the Ritva and the Ramban, and it's Rashi on one hand, the Ritva and the Ramban on the other, about whether this line of Rabbi Shimon disagrees with just the Reisha or the Reisha and the Sefer, with both parts of the Mishnah or just the first part. So, Kol Kasher Lahatzniya Matzniim Kamohu. So anything that normally people store It's an object that people store, and it's the amount that a person would store of that object, right? Every object has the amount that you would store potentially of that object. V'hotzio b'Shabbat, and then you carry out that amount of that item, chayav chatat. You have to bring a korban. Okay, so that's the ratio. What that means is we go by the average person. So if I'm a wealthy person and I would normally never keep that amount, I'd throw that food away, it wouldn't interest me, or I'd throw away something, but the average person wouldn't, then, and I carry it out on Shabbat, even though I'm wealthy, I'm chayav like the average person, okay? So let me just jump right now to Rabbi Shimon before we get to the Seifa to organize it well. So then, at the very 3 lines from the bottom, Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Chanina says, Hi de lo Rabbi Shimon. Our mission doesn't hold like Rabbi Shimon. The Ikar Rabbi Shimon ha'amal lo amru kol shiurin alalu ela lematzniehen. Okay, so that line means those. I'll translate it literally, even though it's not going to make so much sense yet. Those shiurim were only written for the ones who store them. So, according to Rashi, what does that mean? It's disagreeing with what we just said. If I'm rich, I'm wealthy, I don't store those objects, well, then it's not for me. That's Rashi's simple reading of this Mishnah. Okay, but he's basically disagreeing with the rich people versus the average person. Does the rich person go by the average person or by what the person does themselves? So Rabbi Shimon thinks it's much more subjective. Okay, and Tanakama thinks there's an objective reality. It goes, right, the general goes by the average person. But the Seifa seems to indicate, well, it's not fully objective. Okay, the Seifa, going back to the Mishnah now, the kol she'eino kasher latzniya ve'em matznim kamo, if the average person doesn't store this item, not this item or not in the amount, the shiur that it was stored, v'hotzio b'Shabbat, and I take it out on Shabbat, I'm only going to be chayav, eino chayav ela hamatzniya. Now this I didn't explain well enough yesterday. I also made a mistake in this. What this really means is, I'm chayav if I, one time in my life, stored this item, that establishes me forever as, for me, it's not just that it's subjective based on my behavior. If I store that item, then that item becomes important to me. Even if I did it once, it's now going to be important to me for the rest of my life. Okay, so if I ever carry out that amount, I'm going to be obligated. I've created something unique for myself. Now, also, only for myself, keep this in mind because we're going to see someone who disagrees with this, only for myself and forever. According to the Ritva and the Ramban, not only does Rabbi Shimon disagree with the first part of the Mishnah, but he also disagrees here and says, no, one time doesn't do it, okay? If I stored it for a particular purpose and then carried it out for that particular purpose, then I'm obligated. But if I did it once, it doesn't mean that next time that it's going to be important for me unless I store it again. So it depends on, that's why he reads it as, they read it as, lo amru ela lemetzniehen, while they're storing it. But if they stored it once, it doesn't set the tone for the future. So now we're going to jump to the weakness in their commentary, by the way, is that this line is brought when the Gemara is dealing with the first part of the Mishnah and not with the second part. Now the Gemara is dealing with the second part. Kol she'eino kasher latzniam, in the last 4 words of Ayin Ham Bet, Amar Rabbi Elazar, Ha de lo Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar. We're now going to find another approach. The way the simple reading of the Gemara and Rashi's reading is, there's a debate about the Reisha, 2 opinions, and there's a debate about the Seifa, 2 opinions. But if you take the Ritva and the Ramban, which I just mentioned, we're going to actually end up with 3 opinions about the Seifa. And I'll just do a review when I'm done so that you can organize it clearly. You can have it organized clearly. So, Ha de lo Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar de Tanya. Klal Amar Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar. We're now quoting the Braita. Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar said the following: Kol she'eino kasher lahatzniya ve'em matzniim kamohu v'huchshar lezeh v'hitzniyo. Okay, so again, the average person wouldn't store this, but somebody particularly did store it. Uba acher v'hotzio nitchayev zeh b'machshava shel zeh. If I stored it and you took it out, you're chayav also. This was against what we said in the simple reading of the Mishnah. Simple reading of the Mishnah, just me. But since, according to this, it's subjective to the extent that it's only if I consider it important, but once I consider this particular item important, it's now going to be important even for somebody else. So if somebody else takes out that particular item that I stored, we're going to be responsible. Okay, so again, to review, we have, I'll now explain it in a bit of a different way to organize everything. we split it into two. There's items that the average person would store, and then there's items that the average person wouldn't store. So if we start with the items that the average person would store, there's a machloket Rabbi Shimon and Tanakama. Tanakama says even rich people have to be beholden to that, and therefore we go by the average person no matter what. So if a rich person takes it out, they're going to be obligated. According to Rabbi Shimon, no, it doesn't go by a rich person, right? It goes by, if a rich person takes out, the Adam Benoni covers the Adam Benoni and under. But someone who's wealthier, who wouldn't do that, is not going to be obligated. Then if we move to, okay, what if we have an item that the average person wouldn't store, but you particularly stored it? So according to Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, not only are you obligated, also anyone else who takes out that particular item that was stored would be obligated. We have Rabbi Shimon, who holds only for you and only the item that you particularly stored, and Tanakama, who says, again, that's Rabbi Shimon if you hold like the Ramban and the Ritva's explanation of him, and Tanakama, who says for you only, not for anyone else, but forever, right? That amount of that item at this point is now your baseline, okay? And therefore for you forever. So that's a sikum of that whole section. Now we're going to move on to specific items. The Mishnah is going to get into detail about all sorts of specific items and what their particular amount is. Okay, we're getting very, very detail oriented, and we're going to start with animal food. Hamotzi teven kimelo pi para. We're going to learn today that they actually had stores that sold animal food, right? You might not have thought that, but apparently they did. Which I guess makes sense because a lot of people had animals, right? You would think most people had their own farms and had their own stuff, but not necessarily everybody, and they actually had animal stores. That's going to be at the end of, before we get to the next Mishnah, the last line. But hamotzi teven kimelo pi para, eitza kimelo pi gamal, amir kimelo pi taleh. I'll stop here for a minute. If you take out teven, that's the straw that's left over from the wheat after you do the threshing. So if you take out straw, you know what straw used for? For feeding the cows. So because of that, we judge the shiur, the amount, by how much a cow could fill one's mouth with. That's the amount. Kimelo pi gamal, for eitza, which we're going to see eitza, the Gemara is going to explain, I'll already kind of tell you. Eitza is straw, but not from grains, but from legumes. Amir kimelo pi taleh, if you have the, oh, sorry, I got confused. The teven is just hay. The amir is the straw that's after you do the threshing. Amir kimelo pi taleh, okay, that's to fill the mouth of a lamb. Asavim, grass, kimelo pi gdi, to fill the mouth of a goat. Alei shum va'alei bitzalim, okay, the shoots that come out of them. So if they're, now this is going to depend if they're soft, meaning fresh, or if they're dried. Lachim kigroger, when they're moist, they're like, they're food. People eat them. Once you get to people, we're going to see, we already talked about this, and we're going to see it in the next Mishnah, it's a kroger, the size of a fig. Yiveshim, if they're dried out, kimelo pigdi. Then, already people don't eat that. I'm thinking of this book, Gregory the Goat. I don't know if you have this book, who basically eats everything in sight, and then the parents have this issue about, oh no, he won't eat it all, and then parents have an issue, our goat doesn't eat anything, you know, and then finally they feed the goat all these horrible items, right? The goats eat anything. So I was thinking about that when I read this Mishnah. It's called Gregory the Terrible Eater. If you have that book, it's a very funny book. It's all about, you know, kids who don't eat, basically. So Yeveshim kimelo piagdi, so how much you would fill the mouthful of a goat, because he'll eat that. Ve'em mitztarfim ze im ze. Now, when we cut, let's say you take a little bit of teven, a little bit of eitza, and you take that out together, and all together it makes up a shiur of one of them. We'll talk about this later. But would you say there's seiruf? Now, in this case, you have to keep remembering. If we put them, we do say there's seiruf. Seiruf sometimes is a good thing, sometimes a bad thing. In this case, it's going to be a bad thing because if you get up to the minimum shiur, then you're going to be obligated to have to bring a sacrifice, right? You've done something wrong on Shabbat. If you keep under the amount, the requisite amount, then you're in good shape because then you won't be obligated. So here we're going to say we don't consider these shiurim combined. If I take a little bit of teven, a little bit of eitzah, a little bit of grass, you know, and all together they make up a shiur of one of them, let's say, or we'll see. It's actually going to be, it does, we'll see in the Gemara they modify this statement right now, so I want to be very vague about how I explain it. They don't join together. Why? Because you can't combine things where the requisite amount is different. You can combine all sorts of things. If the shiur is a kazayit or a grogeret, you can combine them together. but these have a different shiur for each one, so they can't be combined. So the Gemara starts out, my eitzah, which is what you feed the camel, Amar Rav Yehuda, Tevin Shel Minei Kidney. As I said, okay, the straw that comes from the different legumes. Ki ate Rav Dimi, Amar. Now we're going to bring a machloket from Israel. Rav Dimi, we're going to see Rav Dimi and Ravin, they were both what we call nechute. They were what we call the people who came down from Eretz Yisrael to Babylonia and brought the Torah from Israel. So they each of them bring a different version of a machloket, Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish, who were rabbis in Israel. So he says, Hamotzi Tevin, Kimelo pi para. Okay, that was the shiur for the para. So you take out Tevin, straw, the amount for a cow, but instead of taking it out for a cow, you took it out to feed the gamal. Now, a gamal has a bigger mouth and needs more food. So it's not enough for the gamal. So now we get into, again, it's back to our basic issue. How much does your intent play a factor? You intended to take this out for someone to eat, for an animal to eat, and it wasn't enough food for the animal. So if it was eitzah, you wouldn't be obligated. Okay, let's just take some random numbers. It'll make it easier, and certainly for later on. We'll just say you need 100 of eitzah and you need 80 it's obviously a very large number I'm just using a random number, and 80 of tevin to be chayav. So if you took out 80 of tevin, which was the shiur that you're chayav for a cow, but and you took it for a camel, and a camel needs 100 to eat, so theoretically you really haven't taken out what that camel needs. However, you've taken out something that does count for shiur. So Rabbi Yochanan Amar chayav, because you did the minimum shiur that we talked about, tevin, and Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish Amar patur. He says you're not obligated because we care about not only how much did you take out, but what was your purpose in taking it out. You wanted to take this out and you didn't take enough food for that animal. So now they say, Ba'or ta'amar Rabbi Yochanan hachi, at night, this is what Rabbi Yochanan said, he said chayav, but let's safra hadrabe. But in the morning he changed his mind. He was convinced by Rish Lakish and he changes his mind. Amar Rabbi Yosef, shaper abed dahadar, good that he changed his mind, dahalo chazi legamal, because really what he did wasn't enough of a shiur for the gamal, and therefore he shouldn't be obligated. Amar le Abaye, Adarabba, what are you talking about? I actually think the absolute reverse of you. That's a shiur. Who cares? And again, this is all a matter of how far does kavanah go. It doesn't matter that why you intended to take it out. The fact is, this is a shiur. It's a significant amount if you were to give it to a para. The fact that you were going to give it instead of a cow to a camel and it wasn't enough for the camel shouldn't be a factor. Okay? And this goes back to the previous Mishnah really, which was anything that's kasher lahatzniya and matzniim kamohu, if you take it out, you're chayav. As long as it's something people store and people store in that amount and you take it out, nobody ever said, why did you take it out? Are you taking it out for a useful purpose, for a non-useful purpose, right? It doesn't really matter. That's not a factor. So Abaye disagrees, and it seems like they reject this reasoning, and now this line of thinking. Ella, ki ata Rabin. So now we have a new way of seeing this machloket, Rabbi Yochanan Rish Lakish. When Rabin came, he said the following. Hamotzi tevin kimelo pi para legamal. That was exactly our case we just said. De kule amalo pligi de chayav. Everybody agrees you're obligated, because that's the shiur. It doesn't matter that you're giving it to a camel. Ki pligi, but what's their machloket? In the reverse case. Let's say you take the eitzah, which you're supposed to have 100 for the gamal, but you take out 80 of it. And you take out 80 in order to feed a cow. Now that's enough for a cow, but what's the problem? The problem is that a cow, it's not so easy for a cow to eat the eitzah. That's not something a cow generally eats. And it's hard for the cow to chew it. So therefore, they're going to say like this. And by the way, his version was, instead of Rabbi Yochanan was chayav and Rabbi Shimon, Rish Lakish said patur, his version was the reverse. Because number one, his version was that wasn't the argument. The argument was about this. And, okay, he had the shitot opposite. Rabbi Yochanan amar patur, Rish Lakish amar chayav. Rabbi Yochanan was the one who exempts you. Rabbi Rish Lakish said you're obligated. Rabbi Yochanan amar patur. Why does he think you're patur? Because achila al yedei adchak lo shma achila. If it's hard for the animal to eat that, we don't call that eating. So therefore, even though you brought 80 eitzah for this animal, and theoretically 80 is enough, the size of it was enough, but the quality of what you were bringing there, or the item that you were bringing, wasn't so edible for that animal. So yes, he could eat it, but it's very hard for him to eat it, and therefore, we're not going to consider you obligated, because we don't call that achilah. But Rish Lakish amar chayav, because achila yedei chak shma achila. Okay, this is a big debate. This debate, by the way, comes up also in achila gasa. Achila gasa is if you eat a sick amount of food. Let's say on Yom Kippur, you eat tons and tons of food. Are you obligated for Yom Kippur? Okay, I'll give you the best example of this issue of achila gasa being considered achila. At least I always like this. Sudah Shlishit is one of the hardest meals to eat often. We're not hungry. We've eaten a big meal for lunch. We're not hungry for Sudah Shlishit. I have a lot of interesting things to say about it. We'll get to it when we get to it later in the Masechet when it talks about Sudah Shlishit. But one of the interesting things is there's an opinion that says on a short Shabbat, when you're full from lunch and you're supposed to eat Sudah Shlishit, you're actually exempt from Sudah Shlishit because it would be achila gasa. It would be disgusting to eat more food, and that's not even called achila, so therefore you're exempt, okay? It's not a commonly held shita, but he does say that. It's very interesting, and I always like that because sometimes you really feel like I just can't eat. And that would be called achila gasa, and that's not achila. So anyway, this is similar, except we're talking about animals instead of humans, and would it be called achila yedei chak, called achila or not? Continuing on, Amir kimelo pitale. The Hatanya Kigrogeret, there's a different source that talks about Amir, and it says the shiur is a fig. And here it says it's to fill the mouth of a lamb. So what does the Gemara answer? Great answer. This is like, if you remember the first stop in Brachot, it was the same thing. We had different descriptions and different sources about things that the Gemara in the end said, oh, these are really one and the same. They just describe them because they're describing them in words, and they don't say a kilo, a cup, whatever, weight or measurement you might use. They use it in words. So it's exactly the same thing. Just our Mishnah was talking in terms of how much it would fill the mouth of this or that or the other. So it used that lashon. The Breita there just went with the average. When we measure the shiurim by objects, by other foods. Okay, that actually the Gemara is not dealing with. They just quote it now because they're quoting really the last line, which is the line we're going to deal with, and which I told you we get back to. These do not combine because they're not the same. You can't combine a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of that, and say, again, you wouldn't want to, but let's say you did, and are you obligated or not? We don't obligate you even if you add up to the full amount. So now they're going to say, well, it depends. Amar Rabbi Yossi bar Chanina, ein mitzarfim lachamor shabahen, aval mitzarfim lakal shabahen. This is like when you have a sale, right? You go by the lower, right? You have 2 for 1, right? So let's say you could buy 2 books for the price of 1, but which price, right? The lower price or the higher price? It's always the lower price, the higher price, obviously. So again, what do they say here? If you, what's the chamor and what's the kal? Let's go with that. So the eitzah, you need 100 of to get to the pigamal. That means that the law is more lenient because if you take 80, you're not going to be obligated. So that makes it a more lenient one. So let's say what they're going to say now is they will be mitzaref for the kal shabahen, meaning if you have 50 of tevin and 50 of eitzah, that adds up to 100, you will be obligated. Because eitzah you need more anyway, well, we'll add the tevin to it. But to get to the 80 of tevin, which is a more stringent law, that you only need 80 of tevin, again, I'm really choosing these arbitrary numbers. It's obviously a lot less than 80 of whatever. I'm just kind of throwing a number to make it easy. But if you only need 80 of tevin, then you can't have 50 of tevin and 30 of eitzah. That doesn't work, or 40, or any kind of combination, because that is a more stringent law. So we're not going to let you do the seif in that case. Again, let you is a weird usage of it because it just means you won't be obligated, but you will be obligated for the more lenient one. We will count the numbers together. So now they say, wait, the kol de lo shava b'shiurayhu mi mitzarfim. Could you really, right? We now just said that they can be mitzaref. Now, if they're not equal in size, can you really combine? Since the shiurim are different, it shouldn't really work, and they're going to prove it from a Mishnah. The Hatznan. And now we're going to move back to our favorite topic, Tumah, right? Impurity. Purity and impurity, right? And we talked about different sizes of materials. Okay, we've talked about it more about the 3x3 tzvachim when it comes to a piece of cloth. We said that's something that people would save, a 3x3 tzvachim cloth. Smaller is not makabel tumah. So they say here, habeged, shlosha al shlosha, right? 3x3 tzvachim is the size. Hasak, if you have it, the sak, which is made up of the fibers from the goat, or the goat hairs, dalid al dalid, 4x4 tzvachim, right? Each one we're going to see is the same idea. has a different shiur. You wouldn't use a piece of leather that's 3 by 3. You'd only use it if it was 4 by 4. The ha'or, chamisha, chamisha. Okay, if it's leather, then it's already going to be, you're only going to use it if it's even bigger. And hamapat, which is a mat of reeds, you're going to use shishal, shisha. So what do you see here? Again, if we talk about kal and chamor, so the most kal is the mapat, because only if it's 6 by 6 are we going to say that it's susceptible to impurity. So that's going to be lenient. Okay, again, bigger means more lenient. Betane Allah, and there's a bright about this Mishnah that says, Habeged v'hasak, hasak v'ha'or, ha'or v'amapat, mitzdarfim ze in ze. They can, okay, so again, we're going to go. Beged and sak can be used together if you have a 2 by 2 of a beged and a 2 by 2 of a sak. We're going to combine those together to say it's mekabel tuma, but only if it's the more lenient, right? Nothing can combine for the 3 by 3 size, only a beged. Okay, so there it works. That seems like it should be fine then, but wait. It's only uniquely here that it works. Why? Because all of these items can be used for sitting on. If you remember, we talked about tumat moshab, tumat midras, we call it, right? Where if a zav or a yoled, there's certain people, if they sit on something, they're matame, what they sit on. So all those things, if you want to sit on you want to cover something with you want to put some sort of cover, and let's say you have a little piece of that, a little piece of that, a little piece of that, theoretically, you'll join those all together and you'll put them on, okay? Therefore, when it comes to moshab, since you put these shiurim together, there are cases where you combine these, therefore we can combine shiurim, which makes it sound like the food for the animals, since you don't combine them, you don't give one of the animals a little bit of this and a little bit of that. This animal has his food, that animal has his food, that animal has his food. You don't combine them, it shouldn't. So therefore, Tama deruim l'tamei moshab it would only be if it's for that reason. But here you wouldn't generally combine them, and therefore it sounds like you shouldn't be able to combine. So why does it say that you can? So again, this is all based on whose interpretation? It was Rabbi Yossi bar Chanina, who said that the Mishnah simple reading was they can't be mitzdarif at all. Rabbi Yossi bar Chanina said, well, they can be mitzdarif for the more lenient shiur, for the higher, right, the one that requires more. And yet it doesn't seem to be from this other Mishnah and the explanation of that Mishnah. Amarava, hachinami, chazia leduguma. And here we get back, I told you we get to the stores. In a store where someone was selling animal food, what would they generally do? And Rashi explains that they would do this because if you didn't do this, they might blow away in the wind. They're very light, especially straw and things like that. So they would make a sample, right? Like when you go to a store and you want to see samples of materials, so they would make samples of the food. You want to buy this animal food or that animal food, and they would string them together so that they wouldn't blow away. So there you have a case where they sometimes combine these shiurim. From there, we can say, therefore, we can combine them also for Hotah and Shabbat. It's a very out there answer because it's not like it's being used really, well, it's being used to sell, but anyway, that's their answer. But again, you could read the simple reading of the Mishnah without Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Chanina as if that's not the case, right? According to Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Chanina, it really sounds like they're not mitzdarif at all. This is just to answer his approach that seems like they are. Hamotzi ochlim kigroger. We're now at the last Mishnah of the Perek. If you take out food, what's the shiur, the requisite measure for food? We've seen this many times, the groger, the fig. Then you're chayav. Umitzdarfim zeim zeh. If you take out a little bit of this, a little bit of that, pickle and an olive and a this and that, right, and you have a bunch of different foods, they join together because all of them, other than the previous Mishnah, have the same shiur. It's all a groger. They all have the same shiur. What don't you factor into the number? The measurement, five aspects: the peel, the outer shell, the garin, the seed, the oktzin, the branch, the subin. This is okay. Remember, we talked about there's bower and then there's tisha where you crush it, right? So the subin is, these are both from the inner shell around. There was the outer shell and then there was the inner shell, and then they would take out part of it, and then with the tisha where they crushed it in the pestle, and then there's the later stage where you put it through a sifter. So then there's more. This is all whole wheat, right? In those days, we'll see in a minute, whole wheat was for the poor people, okay? Because they didn't have the time, the wherewithal, right? Nowadays, you go to the store, you buy, whole wheat is way more expensive. I never really figured out why there's such a discrepancy between those days and our days. someone can explain it to me, I'd be happy to hear. Anyway, that part is not really edible. People don't eat that, even though we're going to see it really is edible. What do you mean? People do eat that. But right now, they're going to say that doesn't factor in when it comes to Shabbat. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, chutzmi, he says there's one exception to the rule of what Tanakama said. Tanakama said not the klipa, the shell. Well, he says other than klipa, the shell of lentils, people actually cook with the lentils. I wasn't sure what he meant by the shell, like, I don't know, lentils kind of fall apart inside. Do we eat the shell? I don't know. But the shell of the lentils, apparently they cooked with the item, with the lentils. Besubin umorsnan, to the Gemara starts out and says, Subin umorsnan lo mitzarfim, exactly as I said. What do you mean? People eat that. Why wouldn't they be joined here? V'hatnan, why wouldn't they be considered in the shiur of how much you're carrying out? V'hatnan chameshet reba'im kemach ve'od chayavim b'chala. When it comes to how much challah do you have to take, when you have to separate part of your dough and give it to the kohen, why? How much do you take? So you take 5/4 of a shiur of kemach, of flour, a little bit more than that, you're chayav b'chala, including hain v'suban or sinan, including the bran and the whatever you call it, the extra part, can't think of the word. Anyway, Amar Abaye shekain ani ochel pito b'isa blusa. Comes Abaye and he says that's because when it comes to the challah, the ani, the poor person, eats his bread like this. So when it comes to challah, we're going to include anyone who's making any loaf of bread. Since the ani make their loaves of bread like this, we're going to include it. But when it comes to Shabbat, okay, they don't really say the difference, but Rashi kind of fills it in for us. He says, Shabbat, again, we're going to go back to our mantra that we keep saying, Midi de chashiv v'inan. You need something of significance. And for the average person, again, we keep going back to the average person does not consider this food, and therefore it's not part of it. You'd have to wonder today, is that different? Because many people eat whole wheat, how you would view that. Adashim, right? Nobody ever thinks about when they measure whole wheat flour, do they measure it minus the bigger pieces or not? Anyway, it seems a good question. Adashim, so now we talk about Rabbi Yehuda's exception was chutz miklipe adashim hamikvashlot imahem. Adashim in pulin lo. So it seems to indicate just lentils and not ful, right, which is a type of bean, right? You go to a hummus place, they always sell ful. So it's one of these beans. V'hatanya Rabbi Yehuda omer chutz miklipe pulin va'adashim. So in a different braita, the version is that Rabbi Yehuda excludes from the rule not only lentils, but also ful. So lo kasha. The difference between our Mishnah and that Braita is what type of ful you're talking about. You're talking about new or old, new or softer, old or drier, or dried out. So what do we say? Atike my time alo. So the old ones are not included. That's our Mishnah. Why are they not included? Here's a very interesting answer. It made me think of something also that I've come across. Amar Rabbi Abaye mipnei shenir inkis vuvim b'ka'ara. They're blackened, and when you cook them up with the ful, it looks like there's bugs in your, like bees in your food, and you don't want to be thinking that there's flies in your food. So people don't do it, okay? Because it looks that way. It's not like there's a halachic issue. It just looks that way. So now I thought about what if you eat artichokes. So artichokes sometimes have bugs in them. And one time my husband ate artichokes years ago and found a bug in it. So since then he doesn't really want to eat artichokes. But anyway, I've made artichokes since then, and I put some pepper in. So one time he saw the pepper and he thought it was a bug and he freaked out. So basically, right here you see, so question is, do I stop using the pepper or not? I don't know. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. But I always think about it because the pepper looks like bugs. So it's the same idea here about the black would look like tzuvim. And therefore, again, if you don't cook it with it, then it's not considered in the requisite amount. Hadron alach klal gadol. Now we're moving to the next Mishnah. Hamotzi yayin. Okay. Hamotzi yayin. The next parak, by the way. Okay, so first of all, congratulations for finishing the 7th parak. We're moving along in Shabbat. For those who are using the Shanstein, I know it ends here. New parak, new book tomorrow. The Koran actually ends at the end of this parak and a few more dapim. Just also keep ahead if you're using the Koran. Know that you're going to need the 2nd volume soon. Hamotzi yayin, but really it's a continuation because we're just continuing with the shiur. How much? Hamotzi yayin kedei mizigat hakos. We're now moving from foods. We started with animal foods to human food, now to drinks. Hamotzi yayin kedei mizigat hakos. Now, generally, just so you know, the shiur for liquids in general, okay, first of all, the shiur in general for food items is usually kazayit. When it comes to Shabbat, how much you would take out, it's different. It's kikro garret, and there are different shiurim for different kinds of foods for different things. Like for Yom Kippur, it's kikotev agasa, like a date with the pit, without the pit, this whole debate, right? It's different shiurim for different things. Generally, liquids, it's a revi'it, and we're going to see here different approaches to liquids. So hamotzi yayin kedei mizigat hakos. So remember, in those days, the wine, what would they do? They would have a concentrated amount of wine, and they would add to it. And here's going to be a debate. How much should they add? 3 parts water, 2 parts water to 1 part wine? There's a debate. So the Mishnah just says the amount that you would, now here it's interesting, not a whole cup of wine, just the tarkiz, what we call it, the concentrate. Okay, I always think of those orange concentrates that people used to drink when I was a kid. You know, you would take that and mix it and make orange juice in the olden days. I don't know, maybe people still do it. Or in Israel, it's the petel and things like that. Hamotzi yayin kedei mizigat hakos. So if you take out the concentrate, that's a significant amount. Chalav kedei gmi'ah, milk, the amount you'd swallow in one swallow. Dvash, honey, kedei litem al hakatit, honey to put on a wound. Now Rashi says we're talking about a wound of an animal. Okay, it comes up in a sugya bava metzia that they would put this on the animals. They would use honey, okay, for a petza on a horse, they say, or the camels. But Rashi says at the end, my rabbis, though, pirshu katit makash al gava yad v'shal gava red. It's actually on humans, they would put it. Okay, which makes a little more sense because everything here is really talking about people and not animals. Shemen, kedei lasuch ever katan, okay, oil in order to put on a small part of your body. Mayim kedei lashuk behen et hakilor. You see here that they're talking now about medicinal uses. So these are, by the way, why medicinal uses? First of all, these are smaller than the amount that you would use for eating. So they're saying since these have a use in the medicinal world, therefore you might take them out. So you'll be chayav even a smaller amount. So water, in order to put kilor with some stuff, there was some sort of salve that they would put in their eyes, and you would add some water to it. So the amount of water that you would add to that. Ushar kol mashkin berevi'it. Everything else is the revi'it, okay, which is a quarter. What's a revi'it? It's a quarter. A quarter of what? A quarter of a log. Okay, a log was one of their volume measurements. V'kol ashaprim berevi'it. And anything like sewer water, or I don't know, we're going to see what this is, but any sort of bad water or bad liquid that's rotten, spoiled, is the shiur is a revi'it. Obviously, the Gemara is going to say, why would you be taking this out? It has to have some purpose, obviously, otherwise you wouldn't be obligated. Rabbi Shimon omer kulam berevi'it. Rabbi Shimon's approach is, no. We don't have all these specific shiurim. Everything is a revi'it. V'lo ne'emru kol shiurim halalu ela lematzniehen. Again, he comes and says, this is only if you actually stored it at that requisite amount. Okay? He says, one second, lo ne'emru shiurim sheba mishnah, right? Ela lematzniehen levad, he says. B'chazar hamatzniah, I'm just looking at Rashi, b'hotzio chayav. Again, you hid it, you stored it, and then you took it out, then you be chayav in this small requisite amount. But if not, these are not regular shiurim that one would have. Okay? I'm just going to read a section in Mishnah Eretz Yisrael. He also basically says, we're going to see another approach later on, but he basically says that it splits into 3 approaches. Okay? There's one which basically just says revi'it, that's our general shiur. There's one which is the smallest amount of food possible, which could theoretically be something you would use for medicinal purposes, right? And then he says, one second, what's the third? One second. Right, oh, sorry. The opposite, okay. He says basically there's either a revi'it. If you look at this Mishnah, there's a combination of 3 things. There's the average shiur, the regular one, the revi'it. Then you have the shiur that's used, the smallest amount that you might drink, okay, which is amount, a swallow full, and then you have refuah. So you kind of 3 categories, either standard or specific for eating, or specific for, I should say drinking, or specific for medicinal purposes. And then you have Rabbi Shimon who says, no, right? He goes with the basic. He's the first approach, that it's just the average shiur. Okay, we'll get more into this in the continuation. Tana. So not today, but down the road. Tana, kedem mizigat kos yafeh. So how much is, it's very nice to say kedem mizigat kos. What kind of kos? I mean, you could have a cup that's, right? This is like you say, a cup of water. A cup of water could be a small cup. It could be a big cup. What do you mean a cup? So kedem mizigat kos yafeh, a nice cup. Okay, that's not very helpful. What's a nice cup? Umay kos yafeh, and that was a braita. So now the Gemara tries to explain what's a kos yafeh. Kos shel bracha, a kos you use for making a bracha on. Okay, and that is how much? That's a rivi'it. Okay, that's the classic shiur for a kos. So now we know it's a rivi'it. But again, what don't we know yet? How much of the concentrate do you need of the actual wine to get to a rivi'it? It's going to depend on how much water is added to how much wine. So Amar Rabbi Ravua, kos shel bracha tzarich sheyehe bo rov rivi'it kedei sheim zagenu v'yamod rivi'it. How much do you need? A quarter of a rivi'it, so that when you add your, now obvious it's here, that how much are you adding? 3 parts water. That's going to get you to the rivi'it. That's what they say right now. We're going to see that they bring a proof for this, and then someone's going to argue against this, and we'll see all that tomorrow.